OutFront tonight, General Anthony Zinni joining us. He served as Commander-in-Chief of U.S. Central Command under President Bill Clinton, and Colonel Cedric Leighton, who served as an intelligence officer in the U.S. Air Force. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us. I'd like to call your attention to something Thank you. Secretary Kerry said today that any action by the administration will, quote, bear no resemblance to Afghanistan, Iraq, or even Libya. And then President Obama said this.
In no event are we considering any kind of military action that would involve boots on the ground, that would involve a long-term campaign, but we are looking at the possibility of a limited, narrow act.
General Zinni, you oversaw Bill Clinton's attempt to kill Osama bin Laden back in 1998. You warned against President Bush's mistakes in Iraq. I'm wondering, do you think President Obama is on the verge of making a mistake in Syria?
I think, he's made the commitment and he's put down the red line, and I think it's inevitable now that he has to follow through. If to not follow through would embolden Assad and tell him he could use chemical weapons. I would make one point which is really critical here. This is not about supporting the United States or a United States move. This is about the Chemical Weapons Convention. 191 countries signed on to this, including the British and others. And I think that the administration should have made a better case that this is sort of separate from involvement in long term in this civil war. It's about enforcement of something that 191 countries signed on and only 5 countries have refused to do it.
Well, I think the president has tried to make that. We'll get back to that in a moment. Let me ask Colonel Leighton. The White House released its declassified intelligence assessment today. You've seen it. Was it enough?
Well, I think it's always hard, Jessica, for a government to release information that is derived from some really sensitive sources. So it probably was a good start, but in this environment that we're living in right now, people are going to probably demand as much as they possibly can to see exactly what the intelligence was. Unfortunately, in the real world, that doesn't really allow you to then get further intelligence, and that's going to be a difficult thing for the administration to do, and a difficult piece for them to negotiate, actually.
Well, for example, it doesn't make the case that Assad was directly responsible. It doesn't definitively make that case.
Right, and they have a difficult time because they may have something within classified channels that still says he actually did it or he actually gave the orders. But in many cases like this, even the most highly classified intelligence will have a lot of caveats associated with it, and they will actually say that we believe Assad did it, but we're not quite 100% sure. And he may very well have given a verbal order to somebody in the room, and they then would have executed, and there would be no intelligence trace of that.
General Zinni, going back to the point you were making earlier, the president said U.S. national security is at stake here. And he made that claim in part because the Syrians have chemical weapons. He said that, quote, could threaten us. So his argument is essentially that their stockpile of chemical weapons could fall into the hands of extremists who could use them against the U.S. Do you agree that that's a real danger and reason enough to strike?
Yes. In fact, against U.S. interests doesn't mean attacking the homeland of the United States. It could be attacking our allies. It could be attacking our installations overseas. And when that capability falls in the hands of those who would do us harm, I think it does represent a direct threat. But again, I would say that this is an international issue. And if the international norms are not going to be reinforced by the international community, and it's all going to be left up to the United States, that sends an entirely wrong signal to people like Assad.
Colonel Leighton, U.S. officials are also justifying action by saying that American credibility is at stake. We know the president drew a red line at chemical weapons, so the world has to see that any country who defies the U.S. will suffer consequences. So I'm wondering, given U.S. budget problems, since our military is already stretched thin, is the U.S. still positioned to be the world's policeman?
Well, it's going to be a little bit tougher for the U.S. to do that, but in terms of military capability, there's no one on the block that can do it as well as the U.S. can. And the U.S. has the technical capability, the military capability, in spite of 2 wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Well, should it? That then becomes another issue, but I would say that we have to do something. I do agree with General Zinni that in this particular case, it becomes very, very important for international norms to be upheld, and there is a price that we have to pay in order to do that, because if we don't do that, then the next time comes around, there will be another person, another group, another country that has these weapons, and they will try to get away with it to an even greater extent than Syria has.
All right. Gentlemen, thanks to both of you for being with us.
Our pleasure. Thank you.